Well, there are tensions between the stakeholders, so I guess the most important thing is to look for solutions that are win-wins, and even in the climate change space there are win-wins. But I think we also have to be realistic and not treat all stakeholders as being of equal value. Certainly, if I had to line up, a lobbyist for a fossil fuel company against a conservation group, I know, it's probably pretty obvious which one I would favour. So where possible, look for win-wins that benefit both sides and bring people together. Where that is not possible, be realistic and be honest about the value that you place on the opinions of different stakeholders. Well, firstly, I think you go to those people that have acknowledged credibility, be that in a scientific realm or an economics realm or whatever. So from a scientific perspective, scientists in places like the CSIRO and the Academy of Science and the IPCC and the Bureau of Meteorology, and I would put in the Climate Council there as well. But then also, well-regarded economists, academic, social scientists, etc., but also groups like ACOS and health experts. I think amongst the credible experts, there is an incredibly high consensus, not only about the science and the impacts and the problem, but also about the solution. So finding credible experts that are worthy in their own right, but that also agree with each other is not very difficult. Okay. So sometimes we need to, acknowledge the different expertise, acknowledge that, say, a physical scientist like me might come at a problem in a different way to what a social scientist might. But really, to move forward in the climate change space, which is such a large and wicked and complex problem, there's no one body, there's no one expert that has all the answers. We absolutely have to work together. Yeah. But in some ways, it's the richness of the different approaches that are really important. So yes, the Greenpeaces and the Extinction Rebellions of the world have a different approach to, say, the Climate Council or the Australian Conservation Foundation, and certainly a very different approach to, the IPCC or CSIRO. I think we're sort of have a wealth of different influences, and actually each one of those need to find their own niche, because ultimately we do all want the same thing, which is a safe planet. Well, I think that the relationship of the business community and the government sector is interesting, and it's changing. Traditionally, I think most people have felt that in terms of climate and energy policy, we've been waiting for government to lead that process. I think more and more we see, especially in Australia and in the US, where governments are less willing to lead that process, that the business community and other organisations and community groups are stepping up. We're also seeing subnational governments, local governments and state governments stepping up where there is a vacuum of policy at the federal level. So I think, it depends on what you're talking about as to who does what best. But once again, I come back to what I said before, which is that there have to be multiple types of expertise brought to bear. And now that we do have many in the business community and also many in the governance and regulatory community, places like the Reserve Bank, like APRA, etc., are all really on the same page in terms of climate risk and climate solutions. That there are some really interesting public-private partnerships being formed, and that's a great thing. And there is a demand for that assessment to be credible and consistent. And so it's great that there is a body being developed. It shows a maturity of the field, really. The more people that are involved in any project, the more difficult it is to manage. So, that there is a trade-off always between bringing enough people together that have complementary expertise and having too many people that, you spend your day chasing your tail. I don't think there's any, real clear-cut answer to that. It will depend on the project. I think it means that you need, in anything, to be choosy and careful and do your due diligence of the collaborators and partners that you want to work with. But once again, I would say that we can't fix the climate problem through one single strand of expertise. Far from it. There are multiple things causing the problem, and there have to be multiple solutions, and that means that business people and regulatory bodies and community groups and scientists all have to come together. But it does create management and governance problems, but that's the nature of the beast. You do have to understand that people are complex and flawed. So too many cooks can spoil the broth. So choose your cooks carefully, I think. There's always more to do than we're ever going to have resources to do. Though in the case of the Climate Council, we started 7 years ago. We just had our 7th birthday party, and we started, with one staff member, and we now have 40. We have offices in Sydney and Melbourne and Brisbane. We've started up a whole lot of other arms, such as the Climate Media Centre, such as the Emergency Leaders for Climate Action and the Cities Power Partnership to support local government. So as time has gone on and more resources have become available, we've been able to do more and more. There's always more to do. But one of the things we really have learnt, and this relates to the Climate Media Centre, is that getting the message out, that the messenger is as important as the message. So what we've been doing through the CMC is training up other people, not just us scientists, to deliver the message. So we train farmers to talk to farmers, and doctors to talk to doctors, and engineers to talk to engineers, and firefighters to talk to firefighters, etc., because delivering an effective message it is really dependent on the deliverer of that message, and a farmer talking to a farmer is probably going to be a lot more effective than me talking to a farmer.
Yeah.
So that's what we've learned, and that's what we're putting a lot of our resources. It's a bit like the Al Gore Ambassadors program that he set up following his 2006 movie. We're doing that also, but very deliberately sort of looking to segment the population to train up the most effective spokespeople. So that's really been a big push on our part. But actually getting into those communities and training up people that are local and understand local feelings, I think is going to be a lot more effective. So a distributed model of communication is really what we're talking about. There is a huge climate change influence, but it's taken us 12 reports to get to that point, plus, great spokespeople amongst the firefighting community. So it's not, none of us should be so naive that we can just say something that we think is really powerful once. You've got to say it over and over and over again by multiple people in multiple ways over multiple years to get the message out. One thing about the Climate Council is that we've attracted a staff of incredibly amazing and passionate people. And every time we put out a job ad, there's at least 50 to 100 applicants for every job, even a fairly low-level job. So, which I think is a credit to the organisation and how it's grown and how its profile has grown. But we need all those people. We have fantastic young people who are just social media experts or videography experts or fundraising experts. The counsellors, who are the scientists, sit off to one side, and we get a tremendous amount of help from our internal research team as well. But it's really, the thing I love about the council is that we're all really, really different people. We've come from really different backgrounds and have really different skill sets, but we have an absolutely shared passion and a shared agenda, and we all want the same thing, and we all have to work to maximise our own contributions to that ultimate goal. The best analogy that I've ever heard, which I quite often use, is when most people have done a trivia night somewhere, the local pub or the local school fundraiser or something. The best and most successful teams at a trivia night are those with a diversity of ages and genders and musical tastes and sporting abilities and all of that sort of thing. If you go into a team where you're all the same age, you like the same music and you watch the same TV shows, you're never going to win. The more diverse the team in all aspects of diversity, the more powerful you'll be. And I think that's a great metaphor for achieving virtually anything in society, really. The biggest issue is the urgency of what we need to do. I think, there's a lot of things moving in the right direction, but we're not moving nearly fast enough. Certainly we're going to miss the 1.5 degree mark, and we're probably going to miss the 2 degree mark that is embodied in the Paris Climate Agreement, because we're not moving fast enough. So things mostly there's a lot of things moving in a very positive direction, but we're not doing it fast enough to avoid the absolute worst consequences. So our big challenge is to absolutely accelerate action. So the challenge is to have an even greater emissions drop without actually ruining the economy, like we have been experiencing with COVID. Yeah. So, we need to halve emissions by 2030. We actually need to get to net zero by 2040. 2050 is too late to stay under 2 degrees. And it's great that China's now come out and said they're going to get there by 2060, but that's too late as well.